I'm William. I'm one of the co-founders here at Northspyre. I'm actually subbing in today because the waves of winter sickness is really upon Northspyre, and one of our definitely you guys would have got a better show from another person on our team, but I'm stepping in today in lieu of that. And we also have Haley Yeager, who, like me, we both come with a background from running real estate projects. And so we'll be leading, I'll be leading the training today, and then Haley will be on the call to assist on areas where we need to deep dive on something potentially, and also to help with some of the questions at the end so that I can focus on the training and she can focus on questions that might be coming in, give you guys a bit of background. But I'm really excited to kick off this Northspyre customer webinar where we'll be doing a lot, for this call specifically, we're going to be focused on what is a relatively basic Northspyre training. So consider this as like getting your feet wet in Northspyre. This is going to be the first of many trainings like this. So, while this is an introductory training, some of the others will go a lot more deep dive into specific topics. And so, over the course of this year, you're going to see dozens of these trainings show up. And you'll be welcome to join them and opt into them if you want to join. If there's a topic that you think could be helpful to how your organization operates, you can join. You still have all the other types of trainings that we offer. This doesn't replace that. This is just something I think that we want to offer is a bit more structured program that'll be ongoing. Sometimes people join companies they're unaware of like different things Northspyre does, and you'll see these just pop up every single week. There'll be different trainings on specific topics, and then every now and then we'll circle back. I think we'll do this relatively frequently. We'll do a basic training that's just sort of standing that people can join that are maybe new to your team, or people that haven't, maybe they've been on the platform a long time. The system has changed a lot, and they just want to get reacquainted with the platform, and they want a quick introduction. So keep that in mind. But ideally, I'm going to be speaking today as if I'm talking to primarily like either first-time users or people that are just trying to get like reacquainted. And we'll walk through some of the baseline usefulness of the software and what it replaces in your existing traditional development management processes. I guess at the core, though, before we get too deep into this, I just want to say our goal is to really serve you and help you get value from the Northspyre platform and really achieve your organizational and personal goals, whether that's like reducing cost overruns, whether it's scaling your team efficiently, whether it's building institutional knowledge so you can be a more data empowered real estate development enterprise, or whether it's just spending fewer late nights at the office. Those are all the areas and goals that we're here to help you achieve. And whenever you need help, we want to be there for you. So this is one of the ways we're going to try to do that, right? Is with this webinar series, we sort of heard that feedback that you guys wanted something that like, maybe you're having lunch, you want to be able to opt into, and we'll record these and repost them later for you guys to just have access to in a library. But you also still have all of the normal ways of getting help and support in Northspyre. Every team, for one of our customers that we work with, you guys are assigned a real estate transformation consultant. These have a bit more personalized, adapted support. They can do one-to-one trainings. They can do training specific to your team on any topic. These often come with like real estate background experience or deep customer success experience. The concierge help desk, concierge@northspyre.com. That's like a help desk. If you email them or find them through the chat bot, on average, they respond within 5 minutes. So they're pretty quick at getting back to you, often even faster than your RETC. So, if you have a quick question, you can ping them and they'll even route it to your RETC if you need some more personalized, deeper attention. And then if you just want self-service answers, one of the things we tried to do over the past years to continue to just build that library of content. So if you go to knowledge.northspyre.com, we've grown our knowledge base from 80 articles to 250 articles over the past 12 months, and you'll see that continue to expand this year. So we're trying to find all the ways to like help you guys like be able to get up to speed in the way that is most helpful to you. And I guess I want to jump into this training. I guess the last thing I'll say for people that just joined, again, if you just joined, there's a poll. If you can answer that, that gives us a sense of who has joined the call. Right now, it looks like about half of the people are from the development team. We have people that are from the accounting. About a third of you guys are from the accounting team. Then we have a few people from IT, executive leadership, and other roles within real estate companies on the call. All right. So I'll pause there and just like while people trickle in. These are some of the upcoming trainings that you'll see. So next week we'll do a look back on just product updates and train on some things that happened at the end of last year that are new to the product. We'll talk about document management in Northspyre for things like blueprints, pro forma, files, like all that type of stuff. and how we built some purpose-tailored tools and how you can leverage those in Northspire. Over the course of the next several months, there'll be things ranging from how to deal with tax credit projects to as much as contract management in Northspire or integrations with some of the different like accounting platforms that we work with, all the way to things like spending projections. So you'll have content every single week. These are some of the topics. Stay tuned for that. You'll get an email after this call if you want to sign up for any of those and get those on your calendar. So without much further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into things. Hopefully, if we missed anyone, they could sort of catch up. One thing I recommend is that like you guys follow along. So I presume most of you, this call is for Northspire customers. So I recommend that if you have a login, that you log into the system and actually follow along. And this training is titled Framework for Modernizing Your Development Process. So this is our Northspire 101. We're not going to try to get in everything. There's a lot of things you can dive into in Northspire, but I want our sort of key learning outcomes on this call to be just a couple things. Like one, I want to help you guys just know how to navigate some of the major features in the platform. We're not going to get into every feature, but where the major features are and how to navigate through the platform. And then I think there's usually like three critical things that people are trying to do. They're trying to figure out like, one, how do they manage their project budget? That's one of the core things, right? We're going to get into that. How to approve incoming data coming into the project and how to report on that, right? So we're going to get into that. And then we'll talk about a few themes, like how does Northspire flag early warnings and alerts to keep you more proactively oriented so that like bad things don't happen on your project. And I'll just try to like, again, breeze through and give you some awareness of other more advanced features or more comprehensive features that, other trainings will go deeper into, but I want you to be aware of so that you sort of know what makes sense for you to want to learn more about in the future. And again, if you just joined the call, if you can ask questions, there's a question button below. Haley Yeager, who's on the call as well, is going to help to go through those so that I don't have to delay the training. And then at the end, we'll circle back and we'll try to like save a decent amount of time to get through all of the questions. All right. So without much further ado, let's jump into it. By the way, I'm going to give you guys some homework at the end. You don't have to do it, but some people like homework so they can practice the skills that we're going to learn on this call. So go ahead, log in and follow along. Northspyre.com. There's a login button on the top if you're new. All right, so here, I'm already logged in here. So I'll give you guys just a second to log in if you're not logged in already. All right, so this is the Northspire Portfolio Manager. Think of it as like the portfolio dashboard. This is your mission control center of sorts for your like real estate portfolio. This will allow you to like glean better visibility across all the projects in your portfolio, what stage they're in your project pipeline, whether these are projects that are sort of an early pursuit, back of envelope projects that you're just kicking the tires on. You don't know if you're really going to do that project or not, but you maybe have like some initial costs, like you're pulling an environmental site assessment or something like that, or you're trying to track a preliminary budget and you're using assumptions from other projects you've run in Northspire to populate budget scenarios, right? Like maybe they're living under here in this sort of opportunity phase, and we won't get into this very deeply in this call, but with Northspire, you have access to what's called Northspire plan licenses, which are these unlimited free licenses to basically work with these projects in this sort of early opportunity, early pursuit due diligence stage, where these projects might not come to fruition. You're not committing too many costs to them, but you're sort of kicking the tires. You're tracking a set of tasks that you need to accomplish, and that's what that's for. But again, all these projects live here, and you're able to see through your entire pipeline where things stand. So just to orient you, at the top here, this is going to aggregate all the data across all the projects in your portfolio. So this is giving me a view of, like, if I were to summarize my entire portfolio, what's going on with the budget? Where's my entire portfolio forecasted? I see something in red, I'm going to circle back to that. That looks pretty bad, right? And that's going to be a theme. I'm going to show you about like early warnings and Northspire flagging things that aren't great, right, on your portfolio. But below, you'll see individual projects. So this is an individual project. 100 West Highland Commons is core and shell project, right? And you'll see and then quantitative indicators where the project stands. What's going on with the budget, where the contingency stands, how funding has happened on this project to date, and how Northspire is projecting it to happen in future months, like how your spending projections, and then more qualitative things about your project. What's going on with your schedule? What is the status of different tasks on this project that you might be tracking to and managing against? And so this is able for people often to sort of get a quick sense of what's happening, what's the lay of the land, where are challenges arising across your portfolio. And I guess I'll call out a few different things. Like one, again, it's like you have this pipeline. If I want to be able to filter this down and say, look, I don't care about all my projects. I just want to see the projects that are in this opportunities phase. I can click this, and Northspyre is just going to filter down this dashboard to just include those two projects there in my portfolio, right? I'm just going to go ahead and unclick that. Now I'm basically like, this brings back all of the projects in my portfolio. It's very easy to change which stage a project lives in. Right here, you can see the tag, this project is in the construction phase. I want to click on it, I just click on it here. I can go and change and update what phase this lives in, okay? It's all just like pretty easy. First of all, it's pretty easy, there's a lot going on, but once you get used to it, it's a pretty easy platform to get a handle on. And then if you want to be able to slice and dice this platform or this portfolio overview in a few other ways, right? Like maybe you don't care about all your projects or what stage they're in, but maybe you care about, I want to see projects run by a certain team member, or the West Coast region versus the East Coast region, or maybe projects started in 2015 or something like that, right? You can start to create customized portfolio groupings of projects. And this is a really valuable concept, not just for your portfolio dashboard. So here I have a few set up in this demo environment where I say, hey, what are my projects from the pandemic era? Or what are my projects that Jennifer, our multifamily lead, is running? Right. And then I can quickly dial in and look at, hey, what's going on with the project Jennifer oversees, or what's happening with my East or West Coast region projects, right? And what's powerful is not just that this is for your portfolio dashboard, but like we won't get into it a lot on this call, but then you can also use those groupings to do things like benchmark within those categories in your portfolio analytics suite. So maybe what is architecture spending costs, or what is construction costs within this subset of my portfolio? What about from this time frame in my portfolio? What do things cost? What vendors are we working with? And you can just slice and dice things a lot more gracefully there. So it's a good framework to think about, which, you know, again, that would be a deeper topic in a future, but I wanted to let you guys know that exists. So two quick things I'm going to point out while we're here on this portfolio dashboard that you're just going to see repeatedly over and over again throughout this training. And I think when you think of Northspyre, I want you to think about these two themes, because Northspire's goal in a lot of ways is to try to make you a bit more proactively oriented real estate team that doesn't have to focus on a lot of the minutia of things like compiling reports and doing data entry. But ideally, you're focused on the strategic direction of your projects, right? And so one of the ways we do that is we try to make it easy and surface to relevant information to help you find that. So for example, if we're looking across this top, this aggregated total of all of the values, one of the initial things I'm going to show you is Northspyre tries to alert you to problems that it sees. That, you know, it looks and says, hey, you know, if you approve $245 million of budget across your portfolio, while you're almost at $400 million forecast it. You know, this is all demo fake data, so it's a little bit nonsensical. But even if this was $2 million over, right, like it's starting to sort of key you in that there's a problem by flagging this in red and giving you an alert. And you're going to see that theme over and over. So theme one is like Northspyre is giving you alerts throughout the platform to alert you to like issues it might see, or even opportunities in some cases, right? And then another theme is that unlike, you know, sometimes when you're dealing with a spreadsheet or a legacy application, you might see a number like this $398 million. You might say, my God, that's like pretty bad. I wonder what's in that number. And then you're looking at some type of VLOOKUP function and you don't know what makes up that number. And it's a bit of a mystery, right, to just figure out like what makes up. In Northspyre, you can usually peel away layers of the onion and discover more information. I can click on a number, see what's in it. I can click on a number, see what document backs up to support that number. And so in this case, for example, I'm just going to click on this number and I can see all of the forecasted budgets that are making up that $398 million. And if I want to know more, we're going to use this as an example. We're going to go into this core and shell project, West Highland Commons. I could go down another layer deeper, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time inside of a specific project here. So I'm just going to click on that. This is me, again, peeling away layers of the onion, so to speak. I want to know more information. There's always a click away. I can keep clicking and finding more and more information that's relevant to answer questions quickly and hopefully leverage that to get to results instead of spending your time doing low value administrative work that doesn't drive your project forward. All right. And maybe one thing I'll say is like, you know, when I used to run projects, oftentimes what you see is teams that didn't have access to something like a portfolio dashboard. Often when you want to do an update or figure things out, you had to print it out or set up a one-to-one meeting. And it was very difficult for the senior leadership to quickly check in and see where things were. So when you're using a tool like the portfolio dashboard, it helps you to dial in on what's going on without having all this coordination. Anytime the whole organization is now on the same page. And so I've now clicked into this project. This is the portfolio. This is the project dashboard for a specific project. So think of this as like a real-time view into what's happening on this specific project, 100 West Highland Commons. This is a pretty high-level view. Again, usually this is more useful for like think executives that want to just check in and see like high level what's happening with this project. Maybe they're not in the minutia of all the details, or maybe they want to use this to figure out, should I get into the minutia? And so it's showing you things like where the budget stands, how far along the project is, how much contingency is left on this project, right? And then other critical things that might be happening. Where are different tasks? Are there bids out? And if you guys remember this key things we talked about, you can click on numbers and dive down. But Northspyre is also proactively, the other thing I mentioned was Northspyre is always going to try to flag and alert you to problems. So here's another hint of that, right? You can see that you have $2.5 million of contingency left on that project. Great. Everybody's excited about that. But then Northspyre is, not to be a Debbie Downer, it has a little bit in red here. And it's saying, your contingency is 39% utilized. Now, the reason this is showing up red right now and is giving you this warning is because your project's only 17% complete. So Northspyre is looking at that and saying, hey, your contingency utilization is outpacing how fast you're actually completing the project. And that's a no-no, right? And so Northspyre is flagging that for you just to be aware, right? And maybe you want to dial, I can click on this. I'm not going to do it now. I can click on this and get more information, right? I'm looking at these critical vendors on my projects. Again, flagged in red or yellow. These are vendors that might be trending over their commitment that you've made to them in terms of what you contracted and where we think they're headed, right? So this is always trying to help you dial in. It has all your tasks and your schedule, which ones might be overdue, right? Which ones are overdue, right? It's sort of flagging that. And so we want you to dial in on what are the important things about your project. So this is like a quick, again, real time, high level view into this project. But we're going to spend most of our time, again, on two key things that I really want you to walk away with is how to approve incoming information into your project and how to manage that data and manage your budget on a project, right? And so people often say, okay, all this data is great, fantastic, right? But, I don't want to stay up all night having to key all this data into any system. That'd be a real pain in the neck. And that is why we have the Northspyre data inbox, which is how a lot of this data gets into the system. And that's here. And so before I click on it, I'm just going to give you a quick overview. This is a top navigation bar in Northspyre. So if you're thinking about what are all the major fundamental things that you want to accomplish when you are running a project, a lot of those are living right here along this sort of top navigation bar. So your anticipated cost report, forecasting where your project is headed in the future, and this sort of project health check of sorts, right? Your draw request, you need to report to your capital partners and produce a funding package on a monthly basis or whatever that cadence might be. Click of a button, it's right here. Your document library, this is where it's sort of a purpose-built tool. Think of it like if you souped up Dropbox to make it more custom tailored for what a developer want to do. This is where you're going to keep your blueprints. You might keep your financial performance. You might keep things like field progress report photos, all the core relevant documentation. You might keep your environmental site assessments or geotechnical reports, all sort of here, all the relevant information, your purchase contract agreement, whatever it might be. This is your document library for your hub, your entire team, your acquisitions team, your development project leads, your accounting team, whoever it might be. All the documents living there. This is a schedule tool. We're not going to really get into the schedule tool too much on this call, but generally think of it. And there's a lot of new updates coming to the schedule tool in the next few weeks, actually. But think of this as how you can track key tasks and milestones, your critical path to completion, and things like that. And then Power Tools, this is where all the other comprehensive tools are. Again, we're not going to get into all these on this call. This is an intro training for Northspyre. Get your feet wet. There will be subsequent deep dives into all of these topics. And if there's something you feel like you want us to get into that you don't see on our list of topics we're going to cover in future webinars, definitely ask us. We will do it. We'll set it up and do it. But whether it's other financial tools or places to manipulate and report on all the data across your projects, or to create more flexible reporting with a report builder, or automatic reports that get emailed to you about the status of things. Like maybe you want a report that hits your email inbox every Monday morning on a certain project, right? All of that, all these things live here, or the portfolio analytics, how to benchmark data across and keep track of vendors and what's happening across your entire organization. All that's here. We're not going to get too deep into to the power tools, but I want you guys to know all the main aspects of how you navigate are here on this top nav bar. But back to the question of how's all this data get into Northspyre? The data inbox. And this is where we're going to spend a bit of a moment to talk about that, because I think this is important. So the data inbox, and I'll pause a little bit because I think some of you guys might be following along So I want to make sure I'm not like zooming through a little bit too much. But the data inbox, what you see on the screen, think of this in a lot of ways as like how we eliminate data entry and how we also empower teams to make more proactive forward-looking decisions to avoid expensive budget and cost overruns related to invoices, incoming contracts, change orders, proposals, and other key project documents. So, if you imagine today on your team or prior to Northspyre, if you have like dozens, if not hundreds of vendors, every single day your project leads or your project counter, they're getting hammered with lots of invoices or contracts or proposals getting emailed to them, and they're filling up their email inbox. And if you're, I think there's two types of people. If you're like the type of inbox zero person, then every time you're getting email, you're going in and grabbing, you're saying, oh, I got this invoice from this vendor. Let me take this, let me file it away, and let me download it and upload it to SharePoint or wherever you store your documents in the right folder. And then I'll come back later and put this in my spreadsheet, right? And then if you're more like me, you're not so tidy about your inbox. Maybe you're saying, oh, I'll get back to this when I have to produce my update at the end of the month or my draw package, and I'm going to fish through my email and find all those invoices, and then I'm going to like download them all, upload them, right? A lot of pain in the neck, a lot of disruption. With the data inbox, the hope is that like now you're just focused on running your project. The way it works is it syncs into your email-based workflow. So as vendors are emailing you your documents, we want them to be captured automatically and quickly within Northspyre. So every project in Northspyre gets an email address. And the way you can find that if you're in the data inbox and you go to this little cog here, this is going to tell you what the email address is. And you can sort of you could change that name, whatever you want it to be. Generally, I recommend you make it like the project name, so it's just easy to remember and for vendors to remember, right? So the email address here is 100 West Highland Commons at billing.northspyre.com, right? So what I recommend you do is you instruct vendors that, hey, anytime you're emailing me any invoice, contract, certificate of liability insurance, lien waiver, other docs, right? Just copy the address of this project as well, so that it not only comes to me, it hits my inbox. I see that you sent me something. I can read it in my email. I can do whatever I want. But also at the same time, Northspyre is getting it. And Northspyre, what it's going to do is going to pull that document off of the email, and it's going to start to like extract the data and queue it up for you to review and approve with all the data extracted already. And these are invoices that have gone through that process already. And this is something, again, this is not something that like takes hours or days. This should all happen in a matter of minutes, right? So this is almost real-time information where, again, you're not thinking about fishing stuff out of your email inbox. It's showing up here. If a vendor forgot to copy the address, you can just turn around and forward it to that address, right? And it's going to show up here. You don't have to think about it. You can move on with the work you're doing without distractions. So I'm going to go into an example here. So let's say just Stony from Geo Survey sent me an invoice. And I'm looking at this and it says, okay, Northspyre's automatically done its data extraction. It's ready for me to look at. I'm going to click on this, and I can see Northspyre has pulled this document off the email. So it sees this invoice. It's figured out what vendor it is. It knows the amount. So it's saying this is $1,950. All right, invoice number, all the relevant information is sort of pulled off of this. It's even tried to assign it to the correct budget line. It's pretty nifty most of the time. And maybe if you're happy with that, you're like, great, I'm happy with that. I'm just going to accept this invoice into my project now. Easy peasy, right? Or maybe you want to make some adjustments. Maybe you want to change the description that Northspyre captured. Maybe Northspyre just pulled this description, alter boundary, survey update. Maybe you want to say something else, right? You can always come in and edit these things. So I'm just going to go and edit this transaction. And what I can do is I can change anything about whatever Northspyre automatically extracted. I want to change the description. If I want to change the budget line, maybe Northspyre thought this was for the property survey budget line, and it looks like it should be, right? But maybe I know this invoice and I'm like, this is actually just a consultant reimbursable. And so I'm going to put this on the consultant reimbursable budget. I can change any of that, right? Right here in place before I even accept it into my project. I'm not going to change things now because I don't want to mess up the demo environment. But like it's just that easy, right? You can change anything. And once you're happy with it, right? Again, you can just accept it into the project. You don't have to do a lot of like data wrangling. You have to upload a lot of files manually. And even, I think one of the things like I see like really good team, like really highly effective teams thinking about when they have incoming documents, whether it's invoices or contracts, is not just like, is the information right on the document and do I accept into my project, but what impact would this have on my project? Is this going to create any new project risk that's unforeseen or that I'm missing because I'm getting hundreds of these documents every single month, quarter, and I don't have enough time to vet every single one of them out? So, I know like the most diligent teams, someone gets that invoice and they're like, let me call the project accounting team and say like, hey, let me just make sure, like, does this vendor have enough left on their contract for me to pay this before I bring it into my project? Or let me check my spreadsheet and see like if I were to approve this invoice, is it going to run me over budget or something like that? All right. Like, and so they're cross-referencing these docs. And then you have dozens of these, and they're like, I don't have time. It's late at night. Let me just quickly run through some of these and get them into the project and move on. I have to keep the rest of the project rolling, right? And that's how little mistakes happen because people just don't have time. The great thing about a tool like Northspyre, again, one of our themes, Northspyre is going to try to alert you by flagging things. And maybe some of you guys noticed already, there's a little bit of red here. That red is an alert. It's trying to key your eye in on the fact that like the Northspyre Copilot has flagged two things that it sees as a potential conflict if you were to accept this invoice into your project. And so I'm just going to go to the Copilot analytic here and check that out to see what's Northspyre warning me about before I hit that accept button. And what Northspyre is saying is, well, look, if you were to accept this invoice, this budget is only $2,000. And given that you already have $500 in this budget and you're trying to spend another $1,950, it's going to put you over budget. You're going to be at $450 over budget. So Northspyre is flagging that for you, saying like you didn't have to go like find a spreadsheet to cross-reference against your budget and update that spreadsheet. It's sort of already flagging for you what impact this would have if you were to accept it into your project, right? It's flagging it. And you can even, with a quick click, you can do a budget reallocation if you want to just clean that problem up. Yeah, I know we're going to run over. Let me quickly fix that. First, it's going to say, you would need another $450. It's going to say, I recommend that you pull this out of one of your contingency budget lines, or you can pick whichever one. Maybe I want to pull this out of soft cost contingency. It's going to tell me what impact that would have to those budget line, that contingency bucket if I were to pull that. Or it's telling me all the implications. So in one click, instead of me having to go to a spreadsheet and do budget reallocation and all that, right? And I'm doing this across dozens of invoices. Now I just quickly, with a few clicks, I can do a budget reallocation here. Again, I'm not going to do it because I want you guys to be able to see this warning was here, but I could clear that up really quickly, right? Without having to shift around to a lot of places. And it's looking through the vendor. So, okay, yeah, the vendor, like, oh, I see another issue like this vendor commitment, this contract that we have the vendor. The vendor only has a contract for $1,750. But again, we're trying to invoice over it. Northspyre is flagging that and saying, beware, if you were to accept this, you're overbilling this contract, right? And so again, Northspyre is flagging these types of things, whether it's your budget impact, whether you don't have enough sources to cover that incoming contract or invoice, right? And all that's happening here. And you want to be able to quickly clean those things up. Again, you might even want to leave comments for your team members. You can leave a thread, comments that you guys can collaborate on. And when you're happy, you accept this into your project. So like it's that straightforward. These come in, you accept them into your project. If there's a new vendor Northspyre doesn't recognize, it's going to actually even extract the data off that invoice and say, hey, we recognize some new vendors sending information in. Do you want to approve them into your project, right? So everything's quarantined here. It's easy. It's not, just because vendors are emailing your project doesn't mean that everything is going willy-nilly and your budgets are getting updated without you having control. Everything is quarantined in the data inbox, waiting for you to review. You don't have to do a lot of effort to get there, right? That's one of the great things about the data inbox. And again, this works not just for invoices, but across, whether it's contracts, whether it's certificates of liability insurance. Maybe you want to like it to extract to tell you, hey, when is this certificate of liability insurance going to expire? And Northspyre will automatically run a report alerting you to, hey, these vendors have certificates of liability insurance expiring in the coming weeks or months or whatever. All that is happening just by virtue of it showing up in the data inbox. Does this vendor send you a lien waiver? Northspyre is going to check that and say, hey, does the lien waiver match the invoice that's relevant to it? It's going to do some of that checking for you to make it as easy, right? So that you can spend, again, your time on higher order strategic tasks instead of being in the minutia of the weeds. It's sort of like a little bit like your Copilot assistant to running your project day to day. And again, then you just hit, I want to accept that into my project, right? I'm not going to get into documents too much here. These are more generalized type documents like blueprints and things like that. I'm mostly focused on the financial docs. In the end, I might circle back around a moment to share a little bit about this, but let's focus on the financial docs. And again, all of these are the types of documents that, like, you have all these data points coming to your project in real time, and you can review and approve those. And I guess maybe one other thing I'll show you is like here, if you're like an executive leadership or you're overseeing the development team or the accounting team, and you want to know where, maybe I don't want to just look in one project at the data inbox, but I want to see like, hey, like show me what's happening across my whole portfolio, all the data coming in. Maybe in the past, every project manager or project accountant had different sets of invoices coming into them. You don't know, like maybe Jimmy went on leave and Jimmy has an inbox that's fully backed up with lots of invoices and you don't even know that, right? Like you can look across and see like where things teed up and waiting. And this, right now, like because not because I'm a diligent project manager, but because this demo environment they set up for me, they went ahead and made sure everything is up to date. So if I had a project where I had a lot of invoices that have been waiting for a while, or like I had too many that weren't approved, these would flip to like yellow or red. So like if you're sort of looking at a high level across your portfolio, you can say, holy cow, like Jimmy has like 50 invoices that are just sitting in that project that he hasn't even brought in, right? So it allows you to have that real-time visibility. The moment something's hitting somebody's email inbox, now the whole team has some bit of awareness of what's happening across your portfolio. And maybe like the last thing I'm going to just mention here on the data inbox is, I won't get into it in depth on here, but we talked about a simple approval, like on this GeoServer invoice. I like it. I want to accept it into my project. But you can also set a more rules-based approval process where maybe like you can see here in yellow, this approval workflow. This means this one you don't see just acceptance of invoice. That's because this is telling me is letting me know this came in and that I'm in the queue to approve this at some point. But right now it's stuck in the approval workflow waiting for a set of rules. So you can set a lot of custom rules. You can say what's the size of it. Can be by the size of the invoice. It can be by budget line. It can be by categories of budget lines. It can have multi-set of rules. You can say 2 people need to approve at this step. Whatever the rules are, you sort of set those up. They're pretty easy to set up. And then once all the approvals follow that step and it gets to you, then this will flip to like acceptance to project when it's ready. Okay, so you can have robust control and approval over everything coming to your project, and that sort of way you want it, whether it's like everybody individually accepting things or you have a more collaborative workflow process. Okay, so that's one of the major topics we want to talk about is how do you approve data coming into your project. Okay, and by the way, like Haley, I'm curious, I'm not looking at the questions. Do we have questions populating already? I know we'll get to them at the end, but I just want to gauge make sure I leave enough time to get to all these questions.
Yeah, we have a few, but I think we have time.
Okay, great. So maybe the next question you're probably thinking, okay, great, this data came in, I approved it into my project. I'm happy with the data that's come in. How do I manage that information? What do I do with it? And so where I'm going to go here is the anticipated cost report. And I'll pause a little bit for those of you. I know some of you guys are following along and maybe haven't used the system as much. So that's again on the top navigation where I just went to anticipated cost report. So if you're tracking along with me, just like try to get there. Okay. So I'm just pausing a little bit to let you guys catch up with me. So the anticipated cost report, think of this as Northspire's primary day-to-day decision-making tool. And this really empowers highly effective development teams to not just identify like what happened on their project 30 or 60 days ago, but this is more of your proactive management tool where your project is going to be headed in 6, 12, 18 months into the future. Think of this as like your project health check, your early warning system. This is where your project manager, your project lead should control and manage their budget day to day and their potential forecasting of where things are headed. So often teams, when they come to Northspyre, they're often thinking a lot about like, how do I reduce cost overruns? That's one of the things that people often have as a goal. And what we've noticed is that like the most highly effective teams, they're like pretty proactive in how they manage and forecast spending in their budget. So like the high performing developers, what we usually notice is that they're very future oriented and risk management minded in how they approach running their projects. So, I'll use a contrast. By contrast, some teams will mostly use just a draw request without any type of like forward-looking forecast. And they'll use that to manage primarily because, they have to make that draw request to get their project funded, right? And it is a budget. Maybe it's telling you what happened 30 days ago, but it is a budget. And in some cases, they just don't have the bandwidth, right? Maybe they would create a worst case scenario report that like looks at all the forecasting, but they don't have the bandwidth to put together 2 different reports. Or if they do, they have to keep them reconciled. Maybe the accounting team is making the draw request and the project manager is keeping a forecast, but they don't always speak to each other. They're sort of inconsistent and they have to reconcile them at the end of the month, right? These are things we commonly see. And I guess that can often work on the simplest projects, but when you start to get dozens of vendors on a project and lots of budget lines, things are a little bit complicated, as you guys know. And so like we like teams to be managing their project in a very forward-looking fashion, like forecasting where the project is headed, right? And Northspyre is going to give you the ability to do both of these things in the anticipated cost report, forecast and manage your project on a forward-looking basis, while at the same time in the background, automatically creating like your draw request, which we'll talk about briefly after this. But I think most of the time we're going to really dive into this anticipated cost forecast. So like if you're already taking a bit of a look at what's happening across the top here, you'll see this starts to cue you in into like the critical information you need to know about financial management of this project, right? Where is this project forecast to hit? Right. Well, it's telling me it's forecast at about $26.6 million. Is that a good thing? If I'm looking over here, it's saying we got a bit of a variance. We're trending over. We have a variance from the total approved budget here, which was really $25.7 million. So that doesn't sound great. And I'm a little bit concerned. Northspyre flagging this in yellow is saying you should be a little bit concerned. Keep your eye on this, right? And so Northspyre is flagging that for you. But I'm going to say I'm not like majorly concerned yet for a few reasons. One of those is because Northspyre is also showing me my contingency that I have left on this project. So it's saying so far you have about $2.5 million of contingency left on this project. So even though I'm $951,000 potentially over, it hasn't really taken into account my contingency that's still baked into the budget that I haven't used. Yeah, and so I can press this toggle. I can say offset this variance by contingency, and it's going to show me, okay, yeah, you had $951,000 of overruns, but in reality, you have $2.5 million of contingency baked in there. So you're not going to just let that project run over by $900,000. You're going to transfer out of contingency and use that. So in reality, right now, we're still good. We're all in the green. We have zero variance because we know, but when the project gets to the end, or at some point, we're going to leverage that contingency to deal with overruns. Now, if you're in a situation where your variance starts to project to exceed what you have remaining in contingency, this is going to flip to red and say, actually, this is red. This is a major problem because now we're projecting, even with the contingency you have left, you're not going to have enough contingency to complete this project, right? And ideally, this is the type of thing that like we like teams that try to look beyond the horizon, not just what is 30 days in front of them, right? I think that's the ideal goal. And so when you're able to look beyond the horizon, if you're able to like identify that you have a problem 12, 18 months in advance, you're able to do things like take value engineering measures or make other like adjustments to the project to make sure you can control the budget and mitigate those risks, right? As opposed to finding out that you're going to be $900,000 over budget, but everything is already baked and you can't do too much about it, right? So we want to work with you guys to make sure that all of our teams are very proactively oriented, and that's what the ACR is great for. This one stat here I mentioned quick is called net available funds. This is sort of a Northspyre speak. This is a Northspyre unique thing, and basically what this is doing is this is combing through all of your budget lines that you have here on your project, and it's saying what money is not spoken for yet in this budget. What money have you not had an invoice spent against it? Which money in your budget have you not had a contract against it? What money do you not have a potential exposure where you're saying, hey, something bad might happen. I need to hold this money. And then it's saying like what gaps are left in the budget. So how much free money is out there? Maybe in your mind you're thinking about that's unbought for something. You might want to put a hold in there for that. But like generally this is giving you a sense of like how much untouched money there is throughout the budget that conceivably you could like reallocate around if you really needed to, right? And so Northspyre is always flagging that, and that aligns with these sort of green areas where Northspyre is again an alert. It's flagging opportunities that it sees these areas in green, or where it says, okay, we think that this money might be like available. Take a look at that, right? This might be an opportunity to reallocate money in your budget. Now, on the flip side, not everything is always golden. Northspyre is also flagging things where it sees some problems, and that is the yellow flag, right? Or, if you're a soccer hooligan, football hooligan, the yellow card or something like that, right? So I'm going to like go down to a specific budget line, and just so you guys like know a little bit about like how to navigate this a little gracefully, right? Like these are all of the budget lines on this project. So you might have lots of budget lines. I'm just going to show you. I could like say, hey, this is a lot going on. I just want to condense that down. If you saw that, I just clicked on this. I can sort of unfurl all of my budget lines. I can also close them up and figure out like where I want to dive in. Maybe I just care about my soft cost right now. Maybe I care about my architecture stuff. I don't want to see everything. So this is just a little bit of like visibility. You have a lot going on. It's very easy to open up everything, see it all, or just dive into a few things. All right. And so I'm looking across again. Where am I getting flags? Architect of record. Okay, what's happening here? I have a flag that's saying, if I'm looking across this, right, I have my budget, I have my contracts and commitments, I have that forecasted cost of my exposures and where we're projected, how much we've spent, how many invoices have gone out the door, right? And then what's the variance? Where are we projected to trend over? And so if I'm looking at this architect of record budget line again, I'm saying we're projecting to go over $252,000. I'm a bit concerned. So you remember one of those themes I mentioned in Northspyre is like you can dive into information and discover more information. So I'm at that point now. I'm like, well, I need to figure out what is going on this architect of record budget line. And so maybe I'm looking at this invoice. I'm like, oh, I don't remember us having already invoiced $365,000. What was in that? So I'm gonna, I don't have, it doesn't have to be a mystery. Again, if you are using a spreadsheet, that might be some complex index match function, or maybe somebody just put some and they were just putting numbers in there, and then you don't know, like, do those numbers correspond to some file, hopefully somewhere, and there's not a typo and it's the wrong number. That's why it's not a mystery. I can click on this $365,000. I can see every invoice that makes that up, right here in one place. And then I'm looking at it, I'm saying, oh, I don't even remember what was Cooper Robinson doing on this project. How do we spend money with them? Can click on that, and now I can even dive down another layer deeper. So I'm just like peeling away layers, didn't have to click around a lot of different places, didn't have to go to a different file cabinet or question what was this number somebody keyed into this cell, right? It's all here. I can see the backup documentation. If I wanted to make this bigger, I can say, hey, let's just open this in a new window. I'm not going to do it now, but I can sort of make this doc bigger. This is a backup document that supports that number, so I can see exactly where that number came from. I can see all the detail Northspyre extracted off. If your team was using this would tell you that, like, the team member on your side that approved this invoice originally. So I can see that history of who approved it. I can even see, like, there are multiple versions of this. They would show up in this drop down, and there were like multiple versions of this invoice because you disputed that invoice, and there were different versions that came in. It all live in one place for you to get to. If you want to see the lien waiver for that was associated with this invoice, I can click say, hey, is there a lien waiver? Yep, it's right there. Everything easy to get to. Was this invoice paid? If you have one of our nifty accounting integrations set up, we have accounting integrations, two-way accounting integration with systems like Yardi, MRI, Sage 300, Sage Intacct. RealPage comes out in a few weeks. QuickBooks Online. That's going to pull back payment data so you can also see what got paid as well. So you don't have to annoy your project accounting team. They're very busy and they're saying, oh, there goes Sam calling again. He wants to know, did this vendor get paid? Did this vendor get paid? Because the vendor's nagging Sam, right? So everything's right there. You guys are all on the same page. It's pretty easy to get to, right? And again, you just had to like click into the number and now it's there. There's no mystery. Let's keep looking at this architecture record budget line. And I'm thinking, also maybe I need to just do a budget reallocation, right? Like, and I'm looking at this reallocation column and I could click on this and I could say, this is the history of budget reallocations on this line. I just want to add a quick new one to deal with that overage. I think we're going to need to like transfer some money. Maybe I want to transfer money from our like soft cost contingency and just go ahead and pull that over here. So I can quickly do that. I want to move $300,000 over here. And what you can see is when I start typing that in, first of all, it's already telling me like, hey, the soft cost contingency budget line, if you're taking this money out, this is how much is going to be left. So it's even telling you underneath, hey, if you move $300,000 over here, it's going to be $255,000 left. So it just tries to make everything seamless so you're not cross-referencing too many places, right? I'm not going to say this again. I can write a note about why this overrun happened here. But now you sort of are able to manage your budget in place. You have less room for errors and things, but also just more graceful than using a spreadsheet. And then all this data is tying in on the background and other reports as well, which we're not going to get deeply into, but there's a little bit we might get into. One thing I do want to focus on is like this exposure column, right? This is like where, if your project leads, now they're not spending all their time on a lot of data entry and they're not like bogged down trying to compile a draw package in the middle of the night. My hope is that they're using that extra time to make sure they're keeping track of potential risks that are arising on the project. They're keeping their ear to the ground. Maybe they're in the OAC weekly meeting or they're out on site and they hear maybe in the OAC meeting, maybe the architect is saying, well, the construction team say our roof design doesn't work. And they're not telling you in that meeting that like they're going to send you an ad service proposal, but you're sitting there saying, I know this company, they're probably going to try to send me in a month or two, like some type of ad service to fix a problem they created, right? And so you want to know the worst case scenario where this project ahead, and you want to be tracking that. So what I'm doing, I'm going to go on that architecture record budget line where it says exposures. And these are some exposures I've been tracking already. It looks like I've already tracked $192,000 of them, things I think might happen, or things maybe I have a proposal that I haven't approved yet, right? And you can see all those here, but maybe I just want to add a new one, right? I might say like, OAC meeting, like overheard, like roof like redesign or something like that. Like, and I can quickly say, that was Baggett. I suspect they're going to try to get me. This is my rough estimate I'm putting in. They haven't given me, this is just internal for me to know. I'm gonna throw a rough order of magnitude out. I think they might try to charge me like $7,500 to adjust the drawings, right? And then I might save that. I might even say the cause of this is a design change or errors on a mission or something, right? That's what I'm flagging for my record so I know. And I'm keeping track of all this stuff. I'm not going to save it again, but I just want you guys to see that, right? And so then you can start to track all this stuff. And on the back end, this stuff is living not just in your anticipated, it's updating your forecast for where your project is headed and how much contingency you have left. But it's also doing things like updating reports in the background. I'll just show you, like, if I'm in the commitment data index, I can start to go and see things like, for example, where are all those exposures living? I want to pull a potential exposure log for just exposures. Maybe I want to filter down to just like Woods Baggett, that vendor we were just talking about. Where are all my exposures for Woods Baggett? These are all the ones I'm tracking to. What has been the cause of those exposures historically across my portfolio, right? Like all of that is sort of working in the background just because I'm working gracefully through my anticipated costs, where all these different things in the background are happening. Your exposure, your change order log getting automatically created, your draw request package getting automatically created. So now you're managing your project, your forecast. If you want to save snapshots, say this is great to know where this forecast is. I want to save that snapshot in time. Great, I can save it. Maybe I want to look at where we were a few days ago before I made some updates. And this is pulling up this version of a snapshot from January 25th, right? And then it's comparing it against where we are today. So I can see that like not too much has changed, but I do see in this column we have a few small changes. I have like a $2,000 change or so on the architecture line in the past week or so, right? This budget has trended in the wrong direction, $2,000 over the past week, right? I can quickly come in and see that, but I'm just going to revert back to active. So you can always save these snapshots of what's happening. You can hide columns, all of that. Again, this is a primer, so I don't want to get too deep because I notice I'm probably over talking, so I want to save time for questions. Maybe the last thing I'll quickly talk about is just like your draw request. This is important. You're managing the budget here, but when you get ready to just produce that draw request packet, you just come here, it's a few clicks of a button, pick the draw period you want, and you're able to say, hey, I want to export this and create a package that I can send to my funding partner. And it's going to give you a nice link or email you a link that's like pretty easy. A nice clean draw package that you can send to your funding partners. All pretty straightforward. There are tools for managing, again, your documents. Think of this as like a more purpose-built tool for developers. It's beyond just like Dropbox, right? All that type of functionality where you can share things, but also, and you can sort of switch to view something more familiar. You can drag and drop files in here. You can pin your latest performa. Maybe your CFO, Jenny, is always like, where's the latest performa? There's like 6 different versions. If they're all saved here, you can also pin and say like, hey, this is my latest performer, right? And you can sort of pin whatever the latest, whether you have things like, and then I'll just go back to this table view. You can also have, all of your drawings being sent in. Maybe like this is a site plan that was sent into this project. I can see that here. I can share that out to different vendors that might be relevant for my demo or abatement contractor to see this, to see the blueprints of the existing building on that site or something like that, right? I can share that. I can control access to who can see things. So they don't see all my project, they just see specific files I share with them, right? You can, I didn't talk about it a lot, but in the data inbox, one great thing about the document library is that, like, again, you're often going to email all these docs. You can just forward and email them into the document inbox, and they're going to show up here. So maybe my general contractor sent me a construction progress report or photos every single day, and they're just living in my email. I can just forward them over or tell them to copy that address. They're just going to show up teed up here. Very easy for me to say, okay, I got this file. I pull the file. Where do I want to put it in my document folder? Like all my folder structures here, I can sort of decide like where I want to put it very easily. I could make tags and all of that. So all that is here. You want to track your schedule. Again, I'm not going to talk about schedule too much on this call, but I wanted to just like orient you to what is here. Where are your key tasks? Where are you trending? And again, there'll be deep dive calls on this in future calls. So I'm just going to pause here. We went over how do you accept data into your project, the data inbox, how do you manage your budget, and then some other tools that exist just to get you guys going and oriented. So Haley, I probably talked too much. What questions do we have?
Great. So first question, can I select which critical vendors are shown on my project dashboard?
So if I were to go back to the project dashboard here, this is where we're talking about?
Yep.
So Haley, can you remind me? So here, like, do you know the answer to that question? I think I know, but I know you're like often a better expert at some of these. I don't want to flub it.
Yeah, so if you hit that, I can share, or if you hit the arrow right there.
This one? All right.
Yep.
Great.
Then begin to
Okay.
select vendors to
So there
display.
we go. There we go. Haley actually knows ins and outs a lot of these things a lot better than me. I pretend to be the best, but Haley outshines me here. So there you go. You can select the vendors you want to show. What other ones do we have, Haley?
Another one is, can I be notified about overdue tasks?
Yes. So I guess there are a couple ways to do this. Like I guess Haley, what do you think are like email reports? Is that probably the best way to go about that, or
That's
how
what
would
I would
you?
say. Yeah, the emailed report.
So maybe can I let you drive on that one to
Yeah,
just show
absolutely.
that? So I'm going to just stop sharing and let Haley drive and show you how to set up. So email reports in Northspyre, again, you can get to that by going to Power Tools on that top navigation bar and email reports. And you can sort of set up several like canned reports that give you that set out that send you specific email reports on a cadence based on at a certain, whatever time frame and relevant triggers that you wanted to send. So you can see here Haley is saying on this certain project, this core and shell project, I want this specific report about our task to go out every morning. It looks like Haley, you show them.
Yeah, so right here, this task overview report is the one you'd want. It will highlight overdue tasks for you and summarize again the tasks that are relevant. So you just toggle that on and you can set the frequency that you want to receive it, and it'll get sent to your inbox. All right. Next question is, sorry, we got a few just here at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a way to see all vendors associated with the budget line on the screen at once? This is in reference to the ACR, I believe.
Yeah. So let me go back into the anticipated cost report here. So maybe a good example is to go back to this architect of record budget line where, we're summing up all these vendors, and it was a good observation. I didn't really mention it. We clicked on this. It's like, oh, yeah, all these different vendors in here, right, on this line. But Northspyre is also tracking all those vendors separately. And so I can see if I'm hovering over the budget line, this is saying, not just Wood Backup, but there's 7 more vendors in here. And if I want to know more about those vendors, let's like say I want to know more about Woods Baggett specifically, I'm just going to click on that vendor. And every vendor Northspyre has what's called the project, the vendor overview report for that vendor. So within a project, you can find out all the relevant information about that vendor, where the vendors, this is Woods Baggett, this is data about Woods Baggett, how far along they are against their contract. They're 29% complete on their contract. Any potential exposure in the projecting where we think this contract is going to end out. How much are we paying per square foot or whatever unit type for that? How have we been spending money with them from draw period to draw period on this project? Where are their contracts? Where are their potential costs I'm tracking to their exposures? How many exposures have I negotiated down? What savings do I have? Invoices against that. So all of that is living here. And again, there's a drop down for all the vendors that might be on this project. So, it's 212 service. I'm just sort of hypothetically pulling, all the vendors live here. You can get there. It's pretty easy to figure out about all the vendors. And again, it's, you can get there from, they're here on the ACR. If you hover over and there's multiple, like it'll show up if it's just one, you just click on that one. But you can also go to Power Tools and go to vendors and say like, hey, what's my project vendor overview? And that gives you that specific report on every vendor. Maybe one thing I would say is you can funnel all these vendors up across a global view of what's going on with that vendor and the portfolio analytics suite. So basically it's like that project specific vendor view, but maybe you want to say like, hey, we work on 20 projects. We have a lot of relationships with this vendor. Show me everything, right? And you can get that to that here. I won't go to it now, but like you can also see like that portfolio view of that vendor. What else do we have, Haley?
Okay, another one we have is the project overview report is just for finalized projects. Can you make it for all projects in the pipeline? I can take that one too if you'd like.
Sure, you go ahead.
Okay. So we actually have a dedicated report for planned projects. So
Did you want
I'm
to try? I'll let you try.
okay. All right. So project overview report, and again, I'm in the emailed reports section. So if we were, oh, excuse me, let me go to project in my portfolio. Okay. if I go back to that email report engine that we saw in Power Tools previously, the project overview report is here. We also have this project planning overview. So this is the report that will contain all of your planned projects. It is a different report just specifically because you have different scenarios in the early budget planner. It takes that into account rather than just like picking a random scenario to pull into the project overview. So that's the reason for the differentiated reports. And I definitely encourage you to turn this one on if you're looking for something for those planned projects. All right, I think we have a few more, but some of them might be better to handle kind of as a deeper dive with their RTC. Oh, William, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I muted myself to blow my nose. Some of these, I guess we have like 2 minutes. Are these too thorny to get into in 2 minutes, Haley, or should we try to like?
There's one more I think we can probably cover. So this one says, can you upload an Excel to the schedule page?
So here, I'll go to it, and you want to talk voice over this a little bit about like what we can upload and all that. So the schedule is again on the top nav, and we'll do a full deep dive training on the schedule. And there's a lot of new schedule functionality coming out in a few weeks, in addition to what you see here. But Haley, here, I'll let you just talk me through what you want me to do.
Yeah, so I can just say that right now we have import capability from Microsoft Project and export as well. We do not have Excel, but I would encourage, if you do have Microsoft, if you have your schedule in Microsoft Project, you should be able to import it that way.
And I guess another thing I would mention that, we have our real estate transformation consultant team. They're also backed by a team you guys don't see that much. That, it's a 40 person that does a lot of work in the background. If you have something that's just like a lot of work, like, hey, I have this thing in Excel, I want to get into Northspyre. If you ask your real estate transformation consultant, they'll often ask that team that works behind them, and they can sort of help you guys do that manually as well if it's something. Again, we want to offload work off of your team. So just like, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, I got this schedule. It's in Microsoft Excel. They'll like do it and turn it back around to you in a couple of days and get it all uploaded, even if it needs to be manual. I know we only have 1 minute left. And I guess if there are other questions, I know there's other questions that looks like, Haley, I guess every team has real estate transformation consultant. We're going to flag these questions that we didn't have time to answer, and we're going to try to make sure that the transformation consultant can reach back out and answer that one-to-one for you. That's on your account. So stay tuned over the next 24 hours. They will reach back out and try to answer that question specific to you. And I know those of you that wanted the homework, the things that, we want to be able to take away over the next week or two. Sometimes it's helpful to just get in the system and do things so you remember. What I recommend you do is you try to, if you're not doing this already, start using the data inbox. Get your vendors to send things or for invoices and things to it. See how it works. It's pretty nifty, right? Accept things into your project. Just test that out. I'd love to see all of you guys start not just to use anticipated cost report, but to actually add a couple of exposures in there so you can get used to that like work habit of like proactively orienting like potential costs and not just what happened already. Should get to be like more forward facing and trying to like manage downside risk more proactively. And then the last thing, we didn't talk a lot about the document library, but I love for you guys to give this a try, is upload your latest document set. Maybe send it through the data inbox so you can see how easy it is to just forward files to get them in there and file them away and pin them and share them with other people. So if you want homework, this is what it is. And your transformation consultants, they can dial in and help you with these one-to-one if you're having any issues. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you guys took away a few things, how to please get started in Northspyre. You reorient it. Again, there's going to be a lot of future webinars on topics that range from how to like get your integration going and get the power of like integrating with your accounting system, how to run a pencil requisition process without a pencil in a digital fashion, whether you're doing LIHTC tax credit projects or how to run pre-development. All of these are things that will be coming up. And again, if you have things you want us to talk about, just email us and ask us. We want to have like a series where we'll go through the whole year. And this basic training will probably rerun very frequently. Every week or two, we'll probably rerun this one. So I don't expect you guys all to be back for that one, but this is if you have new people on your team. Again, your transformation consultant, they're happy to do a one-to-one training with that person. So that's not gone away at all. right? But if they also just want to hop on at their convenience while they're eating lunch and watch a webinar or something like this, we'll always be here. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to join our introductory training.